right, welcome back to the Zyori Podcast. Thank you for joining us here on episode 68 of the podcast. It is 4/12/15, a nice sunny Sunday morning, 7:30 a.m. here on the Pacific Coast. Oh my, oh me, it is an early morning podcast. We don't get to do these nearly often enough, or maybe this is the exact frequency they should be. I still got the sleepies in me. I've had the most fucked sleep schedule, I think, for the past 4, 5, maybe 6 days that I've had in a long time. Often we have to switch our sleep schedules here at BTS, but usually it's in chunks. You know, you'll have a week of Star Ladder Europe, then you'll have a week of Summit China, and then you'll have a week of SEA or something like that. So you just have to make that switch, and then eventually you'll go back to more of a normal schedule for North America stuff. I was on China for like 2 days to cast it, so I made the switch, and then after that I started betting on the matches, so I really wanted to watch them. So I was like motivated to just wake up at 4 in the morning to start watching Chinese Dota. So I was doing that kind of off and on for a few days, and then after that, well, we had to do the website. And if you haven't seen it yet, the Beyond the Summit website is out. It's beyondthesummit.tv, and that's my big project. That was something I worked really hard on, and I interfaced with the programmers and kind of came up with a lot of the concepts. And anytime you're doing web development and you're doing kind of like the final push, it's always this insane grind. I've done it a couple times now. If it's like a really small, crappy like portfolio site or just some little like e-commerce like WordPress site, it's usually not as big of a deal. But once you set a deadline, once you're like, all right, this is everything we need, this is everything we have, we're going to set our deadline to get this bitch launched by 2 o'clock p.m. on Friday or whatever your arbitrary number is, right? Once you set that, the grind sinks in. And there's always problems when you migrate from the dev server to the live server and all this kind of stuff. And it was really fun. It's been a while since I've done web dev stuff. You know, since I came out to BTS last year, I remember I said like, "Oh, I've done web stuff. I'd like to do the website." They're like, "No, we can outsource that. We need you to focus on casting. That's your core thing. We're going to do that." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." You know, there was a period in my life when I really wanted to be a web developer. There was a point when I was like post high school, early undergrad, and I remember being asked the tough question. And that question is, if you could do anything and money wasn't a problem, what would you do? And we're like, well, you know what I would do? I would get a computer and I would hide inside and I would make websites. So them bitches ain't have to be talking to me in real life. I could just, send them emails, then I could make their website and they give me money and I could live the dream. I never have to go outside. I could order my cat food on the internet. It'd be awesome. I could mail order my beers, and that was really a dream of mine for a good 2 years or so, is to have a job that involved almost zero face-to-face interface with real people. And of course, that's not even really how web development works. I was living under a rock, but I still like it nonetheless. I was computer science majored for my first year of undergrad. So I've always enjoyed computer sciencey stuff. So it was nice to be able to get back into the little programming swing of things. The web dev guys that we use are actually buddies of mine from college. They have a small business in South Jersey. So I've worked with them quite a bit in the past. And the last like 30 hours or so of the grind, I did a good like over 36 hours. I think I slept for 4 and worked on the website for like 30. So I spent 2, maybe a little more than that. I played a couple of pubs when the guys went to sleep, but it was a fun grind. We got the website out. There's still a ton of changes we need to make for the Beyond the Summit site. We needed to just get it out there. We needed to get it announced, launched, and now we have a place that we can push out updates and have an official news source. That was one of the biggest things about not having a BTS website, is that we never had anywhere to post official shit. You know, BTS like news posts or like BTS picks up Gigabyte as a sponsor. Where do we put it? Well, we post it on Facebook, and Facebook is just not a very reliable source. It just seems weird. It just seems kind of stupid. Like, why are we need an official source here. So I'm glad it's there, and there's a lot of cool stuff we have in mind to do with the site as we improve it. Right now, it's basically like a full portal for the Summit 3, and it's going to be upgraded from what it is now will be just a subsection of the website, and then the full website will be like the official BTS site. So it will be a little bit different, but same framework, same kind of general layout, obviously the same theme, that kind of stuff. So pretty exciting. Tickle or scratch that little bit of esports, of web dev tickling that I haven't gotten a taste of recently. So that's why it's also just good to accomplish things, you know? That's one of the things I love about doing web development, is even though it's tedious and kind of grindy, you make noticeable progress. Every step, every time you go, oh man, that thing's out of line. All right, let's get in there. You're playing around with the CSS, you're adding some paddings, you're fixing some margins, whatever it is you're doing. You see the result right away. So it just has this very satisfying, like, I did this. That was me. I directly changed that. It's just these little pats on the back all the way through. And then when you're done, you're like, whoa, I got a full website. This is awesome. I'm always baffled at how quickly it comes together at the end when you're making a website. But enough about that. So that's kind of what I've been working on for the past 5 or 6 days. That's part of the reason this podcast got pushed back. I wanted to do this podcast like 3 days ago. And every day I started working on other projects, and it's like 8 o'clock at night, and I go, I don't feel like working on it anymore. Then 2 days ago, like, oh, cool, MLG is on. I want to watch MLG. And then yesterday, same thing. Oh, good, big matches on MLG. Really big matches. Yesterday was pretty hype. I love watching LANs. I feel like there's been this just nonstop flux of Dota for like the past 2.5 days or so. I've been working sort of remotely. I go over to, we have an employee that lives nearby, and I go hang out with him and his girlfriend at their house, and sometimes I'll just stay there. You know, I park out, set up on their couch, and plop down the laptop and just get to getting, you know. And we just kept Dota on for nearly like 2 days straight. It's like, oh, MLG's done. All right, flip on Star Ladder. Okay, well, flip on the Summit China, and we could just keep going through. And I just wake up in the middle of the night, and be like, oh, sweet, more Dota's on. This is awesome. Oh, Dota. We had alarms set to watch Summit China. We ignored them most of the time, but it was still cool, still a lot of fun. So, all right, what are we really getting into in this podcast here? We've got a lot of weird things to talk about, and none of it's Dota related. This is one of few non-Dota podcasts, I think, that we're going to have here. There is absolutely nothing on my notes that is Dota specific, except MLG, and I guess the Summit 3 website is kind of Dota related, but in general, I feel like there's not very much there's not very much drama that's worth talking about, I guess I would say, because there's always some drama. There's always something you can talk about, but it's mostly just been LANs and big plays. There haven't been these big debacles or things that I can really sink my teeth into and be super opinionated about specific to Dota. Now, there are some video game things that we want to tackle today. We're going to talk about YouTube and their new revenue model a little bit. We're going to talk a lot about HBO and specifically HBO Go and their live streaming, what have you. And then we're going to talk about Scientology, and I think the big bulk of this podcast is going to be me bitching about religion. So if you are a religious type, if you are a Scientologist, you may hate this edition here of the Zyori Podcast. I also want to talk about Vulcan a little bit, and not Vulcan itself as not in terms of a sellouty thing, but more as a concept and the idea of betting and esports betting, and whether it's good or bad or neutral, all that kind of stuff. So that gives us kind of a good outline of what we want to talk about. So all right, let's start with the news. Let's start in the real world. Let's talk about YouTube a little bit, because this is actually a big one. We talked maybe 3-4 weeks ago about YouTube and their play to break into live streaming and really have a go at Twitch. They've been hiring. They certainly have been scanning the environment, I guess is safe to say. They've been very quiet. They have YouTube Live, which has been rather dormant over the past year or so, really. They've done a couple of live concerts and a couple of other things, but it seems like Twitch is just moving at a much faster speed in terms of how quickly they commandeered the gaming market, and once they hit the critical mass in the gaming market, now how quickly they're expanding outwards, you know? You see HBO, speak of the devil. They just did, was it Silicon Valley that they had like some kind of a podcast thing where they actually had the members of the staff in the Twitch studio where they did a little show? That's pretty cool. That's much different content that is certainly not gaming related. We all just watched Ultra, a big live concert that was on Twitch. YouTube has already kind of done that a little bit. Those are more few and far between, but it's still impressive to see how quickly Twitch is really jumping on it. The whole Twitch music thing, the whole Twitch creative thing. They're just moving a little more quickly, and I think part of that is because they're smaller. There's this idea in business that there's this cycle of businesses start small, and they're little and agile, and they have this advantage because they can change directions real fast. They can make sharp turns, and they can adapt to the environment a lot more quickly because you just have a smaller staff, you have less on the line, you have less infrastructure, you have less invested in general. So you can afford to say, Vulcan's a great example. Okay, we want to be into esports. Let's start a League of Legends team. All right, we did that for 6 months. Didn't really work out. Our team lost. I know, fantasy leagues for esports. That's what we should do. Yeah, all right, let's hop on it. Let's do that. And then they just straight up switch. Same brand, same kind of a logo, and completely different concept, completely different model, not even really interconnected except for the fact that it's in esports and they have some relevant contacts. So I don't think that's that unusual for a smaller, kind of leaner company to come in and undercut the big dogs like YouTube. And you got to remember, YouTube is huge. YouTube is not only this ridiculously massive website that is just absurd in terms of how much traffic it garners around the world, but also that it's owned by Google. And Google plays by a different ball game than kind of the rest of us, or even the rest of the big boys. We consider Twitch a big boy, and YouTube's an even bigger big boy in terms of Google just having sort of a different moral set where they take copyright stuff a little more seriously, and they're much more of this, we want to do it right, we want to do it our way, kind of like a little Valve thing to some degree, where they have their own infrastructure, their own system, their own way of dealing with employees, and they're big enough and bad enough and control enough things that they can really afford to say, it's our way or the highway. You don't like it? Fuck off. Go fuck yourself. Go make your own stream platform. You don't like how we're doing it here at YouTube? Fine. Go watch one of them other shitbags and enjoy the copyright infringement, motherfucker. That's the kind of memo you're getting coming out of the Google office. So they're making a change here. They are finally, I can't believe they haven't done this earlier. This is not, when I first saw this article about, it's called YouTube's rumored subscription service will reportedly launch this year. I was like, oh, subscription service, cool. I wonder what that is. That could mean a lot of different things. Maybe it's like a sub button for channels, and it's literally just Twitch Turbo. It's you pay a monthly fee, and you don't see ads on YouTube. It's basically like an ad block that you pay for that only works on YouTube. As far as I understand it, that is essentially all it is. Great. That is not a big game changer to me personally. I would love to know of the active users on Twitch, and it depends how you define active user. Let's say logs into Twitch once per month. Okay, that's how we denote you as an active user on Twitch. If you log in less than that, you don't count as an active user. What percentage of active users on Twitch have Twitch Turbo? I feel like it can't be a lot. It really can't be that many. Maybe 5-10%. I feel like that might even be generous. I don't see many Twitch Turbo icons in Twitch channels, even the big ones. When you're on BTS and the chat's just spamming like crazy in front of 30K viewers, how often do you see a Twitch Turbo icon? I know I don't very frequently. Now, to be fair, YouTube is a much bigger platform. It appeals to a market that's a little bit older. Well, it appeals to just a broader market in general. The older section may be a little, I don't know. It just seems weird to me. I can't imagine this is really going to be a big blockbuster for YouTube. I like that they're trying to do something to deal with ad block and find ways to diversify the advertising revenue. I've seen a few articles pop up about how the advertising rates are just drastically fluctuating in terms of video service for things like Dailymotion and YouTube and Twitch and all this kind of stuff. The big reason is ad block. Ad block is really having a big impact on the industry, not just esports, but the digital media, the kind of new media industry where you used to be able to roll ads like crazy. If you had 500 to 1,000 views on YouTube, you'd make a decent little bit, maybe $5-10, something like that, get a little, maybe that's over, that's not that much, but still you'd make something worthwhile. We have some videos now that get thousands of views and will pay only a couple dollars in ad revenue. The old model of having just a static, okay, this is how many views you got, and this is the kind of average CPM, we'll guarantee it. That model doesn't work anymore. It used to work really well because there wasn't really ad block, so you could just kind of guess how many views people were getting, you could sell those views, and it was pretty close. Now, you can't guess the instance of ad block because it's so region specific. If you have an SEA or a CIS game that really appeals to that market, the ad fill is shit, and the ad block is really high. So that content is simply just not worth as much as content that caters to North America or Western Europe in particular. So I think this will help diversify the YouTube income a little bit, and it may actually indirectly help ad rates because they've pledged that 55% of the revenue from this subscription will go back to content creators. And they've left it pretty ambiguous in terms of how it's going to go back to content creators, but I think that means that it's basically going to supplement the ad revenue that we've lost because of just shitty ad fill and various other things and saturation in the market. So you should see a little bump in your YouTube ad revenue, but I'm not really sure exactly how it's going to work. So it's interesting. At least YouTube making some strides here. Maybe this is the beginning of a sub button, the beginning of their big play to move into the online streaming market and really have a go at Twitch with some serious firepower, some serious ammunition. We'll see. It's very similar to Netflix, except you still get all the content for free. They have not announced what the fee will be, and I'm really wondering what price point Google has in mind for a YouTube subscription. I think, what is Turbo, actually? Turbo Twitch. Is it $5? I want to say it's $5. I think that's a good price point. I mean, subs are not $5 right now. No, wow, it's $9. $9 for Twitch Turbo. So will it be more or less than that? You still get to watch for free. It's just ad-free. I'm not sure. I think $4.99 is the price point where I would be tempted if I was a dumb consumer, you know? We'll see. The price point is one of the more interesting things there. I'd be curious to know how they come up with that. But we'll see how it works out. YouTube, doing YouTube things, slow and steady. You know, there's a lot of eyes on YouTube. So when you're a big player like that, you have to be very tactful about how you make your moves to make sure you don't come off too money hungry and make sure everything kind of makes sense to some degree. Did BTS start streaming? What does BTS have on at this hour? See, I've been trying to do the podcast at a time when there isn't a lot of other really good content on, and it's just impossible. Like, even when there isn't a tournament going on, like MLG starts in an hour, you've got Dendi, you've got Waga, you've got Join Dota casting an eHome versus EP game, and then you've got Purge playing. You've got so many good streams. Even Merlini streaming. God damn, you can't catch a break, man. The market, it's saturated. Oh, God, it's a tough life. So, anyway, let's move on here. Let's talk about HBO a little bit because this one is a little bit more interesting. We talked about this in the past. HBO Go is going to be available if you're just a regular old schmo and you want to pay for it. You really value HBO that much. Let's see here. I wanted to find it. I had an article about it and I closed it. Yep, there we go. So this one goes back to the end of last year, like early Q4 of 2014, where we talked about this in the podcast, where HBO finally announced that they'll be offering HBO Go online, not bundled to a TV subscription forever, absolutely forever. These paid channels for movies, HBO, Stars, Showtime, all these kind of channels that you have to pay for. They're not public access, which means that you can have profanities, you can have nudity, you get all sorts of other freedoms via the FCC. If you're a paid for kind of like upper tier movie channel, and they can even show porn on them, which is kind of cool. So HBO Go is their online streaming platform. You only get access to it if you have a paid HBO subscription. So when you go to log into HBO Go, you have to select your TV subscription. You go to like Comcast, Xfinity, and then you have to type in literally your Comcast account information. It's a huge pain in the ass. I know a lot of people that pay for HBO but still don't know how to use their HBO Go because it's like, well, I never set up a password. And it's like, well, it's because it's part of your, forget about it. Just fucking try to catch it live. So that's pretty cool. And there's been a lot of talk about how this is going to hurt the industry. And the reason that this is fresh to me is, one, it's a little similar to the YouTube thing, but I happened to see CNN for like 10 minutes last week. I was at a hotel and I was setting up some stuff for the summit. I was going through the paperwork to sign up everything for the Summit 3 room block. And I had to wait for them to work on the contract or do something. And they had CNN on. And they did this whole little expose on what kind of damage HBO's move could do to the cable companies, where you've got, they interviewed, I think, the CEO or the president or some higher up of HBO. And it was strange to me because I didn't think the points were that far off, but it was the tone that kind of left me in this odd, I had this bad taste in my mouth. They were talking about how HBO breaking away from bundling with cable companies is really going to hurt the cable market and how stocks are going to fall. It's going to hurt the market and all this kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, well, but is that really a bad thing? I mean, you're right. There will be repercussions from this move, but it's not HBO's fucking job to keep the outdated cable companies afloat. And if HBO has that much of a hold on the cable companies there is a significant portion of consumers that have cable because cable is required to access HBO. Hence, if HBO goes digital and you don't need cable lines anymore, those people unsubscribe from cable. If there really are that many people that this is a big deal, this is a big cause for concern, then the cable companies are in even worse shape than I thought, because they were already in bad shape, but there's no way HBO is keeping them afloat. They're falling apart for reasons outside of what kind of content they're putting out. Not only is the content on cable TV actually atrocious on most channels, but the bigger problem is it's just an outdated delivery method. That whole, okay, we're going to do season 2 of a show and we're going to string it out across every week and you're going to have to wait on the cliffhangers. That's falling by the wayside. That has almost been proven to be a less, not effective, but a less wanted form of content delivery. People just, in general, like this Netflix model. They like the idea of having a whole series of a show released at once. You can watch it at your own speed. You can binge it if you want to. You can watch one episode per month if you want to, but it's all there. You can watch the whole season in one fell swoop. And that's just something that traditional cable TV doesn't offer. The other problem is commercials. I think in the future there's going to be even more of this pay us a little bit of money and you won't have to see any commercials, because the whole basis of advertising is that you as an individual is not worth very much. But if you're going to roll an ad in front of 10 million eyeballs, then, well, even if each one of those eyeballs is worth just a penny, well, that's okay. That's pretty good. And even eyes are worth, I'd say they're worth $1. Great. There you go. $10 million in advertising revenue right there. So if you can get those individuals to pay $1.50 or $2, that could be value for that person and not see an ad. And then they're actually giving you more money than you can sell their eyeballs for. Of course, that number that their eyeballs are worth totally changes based on the content, the demographics, all this kind of stuff. But that general concept is the same, where you're paying for an individual value that isn't there when you're part of a big group. It's kind of a strange concept. And I think we're just going to see more and more of this subscription-based stuff. Like, look at how much of it has come to popularity. Netflix, Spotify, HBO Go is definitely going to be huge. Even Twitch, look at how successful they've been with these subscribe buttons. You have streamers that have given up all of their ad revenue claims so that they can keep 100% of their sub revenue. That's how serious the subscription monetary model is working just kind of in general in this modern age that we have going on. It's really interesting. But I just found it weird that these guys on CNN were sort of talking as if it's HBO's duty to make sure that they don't hurt the market or hurt the cable. Fuck the cable companies. They're probably the same douchebags that talk about Uber like it's this big drain on the taxi industry. Like, oh my, Uber, it's not part of the unions, it's running all these other taxi services out of business. Yeah, why do you think it's doing that? It's not because Uber is some terrible, evil app that's really trying to fuck the world out of good taxi prices, you know? It's not because somebody has a vendetta against taxi drivers and really wants to, you know, make a niche for people that have technology. It's because somebody came up with a fucking good business model. Somebody came up with a really good idea that cashes in on modern technology and GPS activity to allow people to come together for a mutually beneficial business arrangement that's very simplistic, doesn't involve tipping, and changes the paradigm of the whole thing. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing that says, oh, the taxi industry, it's been around for forever, and we got to keep it around. We got to stop all this new agey shit from shutting it down. We don't have apps. Well, then maybe you should get off your fat ass and start making some taxi apps, and maybe people would start using regular taxis more than they use Uber. People use Uber because it's better, it's cleaner, it's safer, it's easier to use, and it's less expensive. It is just a straight up better experience, and it is disgusting to me to see these cities and these local municipalities that are putting bans on Ubers or making it that making sure that Uber gets automatically bundled in with taxi unions, forcing them to be part of unions and pay dues and do all the other bullshit that taxi unions make you do. It's terrible. Territories and all this stuff, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's the very antithesis of free market concepts that the country was founded upon. It's actually gross. And I don't know, maybe it's some liberals over there on CNN, but it reminded me of that quite a bit. And I was like, after hearing the little piece, I was like, you go HBO, you get off cable. Fuck Comcast, fuck those guys. They don't need you. You better than that, HBO. Come on now, you know what's good. So it's very exciting. I, for one, am looking forward to HBO Go. I think it's going to be kind of expensive. I think it's going to be $15 a month, something like that. So it will be a little bit pricey, but I contend it's well worth it. It is a pretty damn good. It's just good. It's just high quality. I'm a big fan of HBO shows. I'm an HBO fanboy, so maybe I'll just stop talking about it. But we're going to move on here. We're at about the halfway point, and that means it's time to talk about Scientology. I have this bad habit of calling it sociology. I don't know when that happened. I don't know when my brain just like took those two words and made them one. I've done it like every way imaginable, where I'm typing Scientology and I say sociology out loud, where I say Scientology and then I type sociology. They're just too similar of words, and it's sort of like conscience and conscious. I have trouble with those. I always have to like sound it out when I'm typing. Am I conscience, conscience, or am I conscious? It just messes with me. So, all right, let's delve deep here. Let's take a deep breath and go for it. So, one of the reasons I really like HBO is because they have a great variety of content. I think their fiction-y, their fantasy shows are great. HBO, I just said HBO as a show. Game of Thrones, Big Love, all these stories that are based off books. What's that detective show? Is it Great Detective? No, True Detective. All those kind of shows. Really top-notch stuff. Their Their late night, I think, is very good, very tasteful, right? Who doesn't like Katie Morgan in The Buff? Come on, man, it's good stuff. And then you've got their documentaries, and they have a history of doing really top-notch documentaries. I talked about the Bobby Fischer one, I think, on, God, that was probably 6 or 7 podcasts ago. Really, really good. Absolutely worth watching. Goes over. It's not quite as controversial of a story, but a very interesting story worth hearing. They just released the Scientology documentary. It's called Going Clear. It's been all over the headlines. If you haven't heard about it, you probably just haven't been paying attention to the media news. Most religious things are controversial in terms of having a documentary that exposes the truth, exposes the lies, and that kind of stuff. But this one is a little bit different. Scientology is notorious for being very, very aggressive and very active against naysayers. Anyone who records an auditing session when they use an e-meter and then tries to post it on the internet, or someone that kind of goes under the guise of being a Scientologist and then comes in and tries to leak all this information, all that kind of stuff. Even just a celebrity that is involved with it and then parts ways and tries to publicly loudmouth and bash them. It's not easy. Tipping. That's something we'll have to save for another podcast. I can talk about that for an hour by itself. But they're notorious for silencing people that speak out against them. They're very into images. They're very into people like Tom Cruise. There was that whole thing about finding a wife for him and doing all this stuff to make him really look like he's top notch and all this kind of shit. They're very much so about appearances, and it hasn't been an easy egg to crack. There aren't very many documentarians that want to go out there and put their neck on the line like this. It's either you really want to do that kind of investigative journalism and you don't have the finances or any kind of platform to back you up and get it out there, or you have the big platform and you could get something like that out there, but you don't really want to deal with the PR battle that's going to come with something like Scientology, which is, like I said, something that is definitely going to have some backlash. There's going to be some PR, and you're going to have to put up a fight. You're going to need to get your lawyers online, and you need to fact check the fuck out of this thing. That if you know that whatever you're jumping into is going to be fiery, hot and debated, you got to fact check the fuck out of it. And it takes your documentary from, this is kind of what I found, this is cool, to this is what we found, this is what we investigated, and this is what we found to be truth by corroborating stories. It just takes your documentary level. You got to crank it up to 11 if you want to do something like this and take them on hardcore. John Travolta wasn't a fan. So imagine you can imagine here. I haven't experienced anything that the hearsay has claimed, so why would I communicate something that wasn't true for me? It wouldn't make sense for me, nor would it for Tom Cruise, I imagine. That was kind of his quote about what's been going on. So, all right, let's talk about the documentary itself a little bit. And absolutely worth a watch. I will say probably most decent documentaries are worth a watch if you're a frequent viewer here around the Zyori TV channel. Certainly if you're a sub. Oh, look at that, Screwdizzle, 2 months in a row. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. It's worth watching. But let's talk a little bit about the basis here. It started on L. Ron Hubbard, and for me, this is a little bit more of a personal issue to some degree. I don't have huge experience with Scientology, but one of my parents owns a small business, several actually, and they needed some consulting help. Just in general. And there's a correlation of consulting and Scientology. LA area, like South California, Pasadena, that kind of place, very, very Scientology heavy. That's kind of where it started way back in the day, like in the 60s and the 70s. And there's a fuckload of them up in Seattle, like an absurd amount. So the consulting group that they were using was in Seattle, and it was for medical consulting stuff. If you own a medical business, like veterinary, that kind of thing. And they were really, really good consultants, almost too good to the point that you wonder a little bit, damn, you guys are really good at squeezing money out of people. And then you start to connect the dots a little bit and you go, oh, they're all Scientologists. Okay. And this is something that Scientologists are very good at. There's this whole complex system that you go through to achieve the ranks in Scientology. And I think that what is the top one? Is it OT8? Is that it? I wish I could see the chart here. Of course, it's not on the Wikipedia page. God damn it. They've got everything else you would imagine, Beliefs and practices. Damn it, where is it? I can picture the chart in my head. They show it in the documentary. It's not like a secret chart or anything. I've seen it in real life. The consultants gave it to my parents. They're like, "Yeah, this is the chart of happiness. Look, you flow this, and if you get to the top, you'll be like L. Ron." So L. Ron Hubbard, he was this big doucher of a guy. He was a fantasy writer, and he actually holds the world record for most books published. He's published over 1,000 books, which is actually insane. Think about how much writing that is. This guy was an actual machine when it came to churning out literature. And he wrote that book, Dianetics. And I'm forgetting now what the whole deal with Dianetics is, but that's basically the one that got it all started. And it made a little bit of basic sense, the whole general point. It was like a self-help thing, and basically my takeaway was if you vent things that are stressors on you, it makes you a little bit happier. That was kind of my takeaway. That idea of like confession, confession does something. That's why religion worked way back in the day as a control mechanism when people were stupid, because you go into a little box, you confess things, and you walk out and you go, wow, I got all that shit off my chest to some mystery person that's not going to judge me, and now I've been forgiven by God. You have that feeling of relief. It's good. It's euphoric. And they try to do the same thing with auditing. And I think that general relationship of venting is kind of the basis for a lot of religion, but in particular, Scientology. So what you do, you get audited, and that's when you go use the little e-meter thing. And an e-meter, it's really just a third of a lie detector. It detects the little body pulses and stuff when you're like, you're getting hype and you're upset. It detects things. It reads your pulse. I don't think it actually reads your pulse, but it reads a little electricity coming through your body. That's all it is. It's just it's like a miniature, shittier version of a lie detector machine. So you come in, you're all nervous, you don't really know what to expect, and they start asking you stuff. They audit you, and they start asking, oh yeah, Dianetics brings about the idea of auditing. So they ask you all this stuff, and you're supposed to kind of confess, and you're supposed to tell stories about when you fucked things up, and then you do it again, and then you do it again, and you keep going over, you keep mulching over the same shit until you feel good about it, until you've talked it out of your system. And then you walk out of your auditing session, you're feeling great. You've just, you're attempting to audit a person to get rid of the painful experiences in the past. There you go. That's what they call is the cause of the, quote, reactive mind, all these silly buzzwords. So, the thing that really blows my mind about all this shit, like, oh, that sounds pretty good. This isn't even where it gets crazy yet. This is the very nice, the very fluffy. This is what we present to the people coming in with a little more truth. They don't tell you an e-meter is a third of a lie detector. They tell you it's this really mystical machine that can do all this fun stuff, and it detects all the thetans or some bullshit, whatever it does. I'm paraphrasing here. I don't know all of the very nuanced parts of it. The thing that's weird about the documentary is you don't really understand what's going on in the first parts, because you have to have the vocabulary. And I even had a leg up on the vocabulary, and I'm still like, the way they go over it very quickly. Okay, so this is what an e-meter does, and then you do this and that, and then once you start talking to your thetans, then you transcend into the Oct 4, and then after you're there, you get into the sexual. It's just this very verbose in terms of the vocabulary, and that's intentional. They make it convoluted. L. Ron Hubbard is reported for saying multiple times that, when he was just a writer, before he started a religion, that, oh, religion sounds like a tax-free haven to me. Having a religion sounds like a great way to avoid taxes. The guy really hated taxes. He was like that dude from Greece way back in the day that refused to pay taxes because he didn't like what the government was spending his taxes on, so they threw him in the slammer, and he was okay with it. He's like, that's fair enough, L. Ron's like that guy, except when they said, we're going to throw you in the slammer, he said, all right, fuck you guys, I'm going to get on a boat, and then you guys can't catch me because I'm in international waters. What's up, motherfuckers? Like, the guy was just a legit tax invader. I said invader, evader. Like, he started a religion so that he could get nonprofit tax-exempt status. That was the foundation. So then once he got that, it was like, well, oh, great. We already did the hard part. Now we just have to piece it all together. So they took some real technology, a little bit of a lie detector. They took a process of getting stuff off your chest, confession, that is known to do well for people. That's like the most basic of basic self-help techniques. And then they just kind of just spackled in all the missing pieces with all this weird mysticism. All this kind of stuff about what Dianetics can do and the thetans, and they just kind of took real-life foundation with a little bit of science and then just added in all this extra bullshit. And then they copyrighted the fuck out of it, and then they told you, well, here's all these checkpoints. You start at level 0, you're an idiot. Here, spend $50, buy all these books, read Dianetics for Christ's sake. You read these books, congratulations, you've made it to level 2. And you think to yourself, wow, level 2, I'm really making progress. I'm moving up in the ranks. And then what's at level 2? Well, okay, here we're going to audit a little more. We got some new books for you to buy. You're going to go home and read these. You're going to jerk off a few times. You're going to get rid of your thetans. You're going to get audited again. Then maybe you'll move on to level 3. Well, there's like 50 levels. And at every level, you got to buy more stuff. You got to buy more literature. You got to buy more auditing sessions. And they set it up in such a way that it's cheaper if you buy more in bulk. So you always say to yourself, well, this is getting a little weird, but I've already paid for the next session. I might as well just go to it and see what it's about. So you just keep falling deeper and deeper into this spiral of deception and manipulation so that you just know the next level is when you really start to, and apparently at the highest level, whatever it is, OT8, I think, that's when shit gets really bonkers. That's when you're like, you're a magician and you've transcended the physical body. That's basically what they said happened to Elrond when he died. It's like, no, he's still alive. He's still going. He just isn't in his body anymore. He's ascended to the next level. It's like, motherfucker, the dude just died. He smoked a fuckload of cigarettes. He probably had lung cancer. He dead. All right, get over it. It's donezo. I really want to try to find the levels of, let's see here. No, you've got all these. Let me see. I should have looked this up before I started. Scientology levels. Like, they literally created a ladder. Yeah, here it is. You got OT1, and it goes all the way through OT8, called The Truth Revealed. That's when shit gets really crazy. Is that the one where Xenu comes out? No. It's OT3. That's when it starts getting crazy. So it starts normal, and every level you get, it gets more and more science fiction-y, more and more ridiculous, more and more just, okay, this doesn't really make a lot of sense, but again, I've already paid for it, I should stick around. So this one comes about, let's see, who is Xenu? What's his deal? He's the dictator of the Galactic Confederacy who 75 trillion years ago brought billions of people from his planet to Earth, known as TGAC. And a DC-8-like spacecraft stacked them around volcanoes, then killed them with hydrogen bombs. Officially, Scientology scriptures hold that thetans, the immortal spirits of these aliens, adhere to humans, causing them spiritual harm. So that's the general idea of Xenu, this galactic confederacy dictator that did a billion-person genocide in our volcanoes that didn't exist trillions of years ago. So, okay, well, once you've digested that, then you get to move on. This is only OT3, mind you. There's 8 levels of OT. When you start into OT3, this is what they open it with. They go, okay, great. Welcome, everybody, to OT3. Now, we're going to talk about some advanced technology doctrines today. Now get ready, okay? So there's this motherfucking named Xenu, all right? And this guy was crazy. I'll think of 75 trillion years ago. And they interview people that saw this. And they were like, all right, I was into it. I was feeling good. I was getting self-help. And then they tell me this, and I think, where did this come from? Like, why didn't you tell me this when I signed up? Because I never would have bought into this shit if you had told me this is what it's all leading to. Again, it's about the illusions. It's about this whole thing. So anyway, enough about the specifics that I'm butchering here, but shit gets really crazy in kind of the second era of Scientology. And this is all kind of the preface before we get into the good shit. So L. Ron Hubbard died, right? He was an old dude. I mean, they have video of him and stuff. He's not that old, but he died in 86. So he died in the mid-80s. He was pretty reclusive for like the last decade of his life because he was basically on the run from evading taxes. Guy refused to pay any fucking taxes. He was actually just a crook. He was a big asshole. Not an L. Ron Hubbard fan. They had a whole big headquarters in Hollywood. They did this whole thing to get on TV and really make a push that way and get media out there. It's pretty serious, but when L. Ron died is when shit started getting really crazy, because at least he was the original dude, and he was a bullshitter, but he was a good storyteller. That was his whole thing. He was a writer. He was a science fiction writer first. So even though everything that he was spewing as self-help was mostly bullshit, at least he genuinely believed it. So for the people that got into it, for the people that went and saw a Dianetics lecture and really identified with it and got into it, you can't fault those people. You can't fault them because they actually saw the guy that believed it to some degree. It's that classic line from Seinfeld, George Costanza, to be a good lawyer, you have to actually believe it, Jerry. You got to believe the bullshit. And I'm sure Hubbard believed all this bullshit. Now, this is where it gets crazy. David Miscavige is the guy that comes over after everything kind of starts to fall apart. He's just this kind of try-hard dude. He had been working in Scientology forever. I don't know what level he was at, but after L. Ron died, he just kind of popped up. Nobody else was really there. He didn't really have an obvious successor. He didn't have a living will and testament. And again, Miscavige started as an assistant to L. Ron Hubbard while he was a teenager. So he was very involved in the church growing up and did all this stuff. He really made a big effort to push for the church to be tax exempt, and that was when things got really crazy. When the IRS was charged with the task of saying, well, how do we define a religion? Obviously, religions should be tax exempt, and there's this sort of unwritten idea with tax exempt religions that they're supposed to put some of their money, their income, towards helping the common good. So if they shouldn't have a lot of money in the bank. You've got money, well, okay, you should go try and build a park, or you should go get rid of paint over graffiti, just do something for the common good. That's kind of what goes in line with that tax exempt status, is you're not banking up a huge amount of cash, and it's sort of a pseudo charity with a little more structure kind of. It's sort of a gray area, and for a long time, no one ever really abused it to this degree. And as it turns out, it's very difficult to define when an organization becomes a religion. What is the defining line that separates cult from religion? And there isn't a good definition. Most of the good definitions you'll see in pamphlets on college campuses about cults are completely biased and use vocabulary that you could apply to any religion, because there isn't one. People that are members of a cult, first thing they say, oh, people are there against their will. But if you talk to anybody who's in a cult, they'll say, no, I'm happy to be here. This is great. That's part of what has made them brainwashed, is that they want to be there even though they're getting abused and taken advantage of in a lot of cases. There isn't just a black and white magic definition of this is the difference between a cult and religion. Both of them have similarities and differences that kind of make it this weird incestuous overlap of things. And the same kind of goes for just defining a religion, period. What makes it a religion? Is it just number of followers? Is it having a guy is there some degree of mysticism that has to be involved? How do you prove that this is a religion and not a business based on mythical teachings? It all becomes this weird battle of semantics, and ultimately the IRS said, fuck it, we don't have any philosophizers on staff. Let's just make them a religion because it'll make our paperwork easier. So Scientology is this tax-free haven. They have billions in the bank, literally billions with a B. In the tens of billions of cash in the bank is what Scientology has across their different sects. It's actually absurd how much money they have, and in turn, how much power that gives them, because they can just buy their way into things. They can just buy the kind of PR they want. Kind of before this little documentary came out, and in the documentary they talk about they have a lot of people that were members of Scientology that have left. There's this whole thing about Tom Cruise. I hadn't realized that Tom Cruise actually left in 2005. But it got a little crazier as Miscavige was taking over more and more, and it got further away from L. Ron's core teachings and more this kind of, it's just keeping the infrastructure around that L. Ron was all into. But what they do to control people is, this is where it starts to get fucked up, is you do these auditing sessions, and absolutely everything is recorded. Everything. There's cameras, microphones everywhere, and the whole point is so that they can go back and they can kind of look at your interactions. You can go back and see yourself, you come in and you're all nervous and upset, and then you get audited, and after 2 hours you go out and you can see the difference on camera, all this kind of shit, right? Most people don't have a big problem with it, but they tell you, oh, it's never going to be used against you, we won't share it with anyone, it's totally secret. But then, let's say you're a Scientologist for 10 years. You get to OT3 and you go, Xenu, fuck this shit. If I wanted to read about science fiction, I'd buy a Star Trek book. You peace out and you make a vlog like this about how shitty Scientology is. You better expect some DMCA shit at your front door. You better expect them to be going after you, and they will go through everything that you talked about in your auditing sessions and just try and pull out bad things that you said that they can use to damage you. And it's not defamation, and it's not illegal because you voluntarily gave them that information. It's not technically blackmail because they're not asking you for money. They're saying, stop talking shit about us, or else we will release all of this footage of you admitting to cheating on your wife or raping your kid or whatever it is that you did that was so bad, or a series of things that you did that are so bad or so embarrassing that you wouldn't want out there. They'll threaten you with it. And most people will back down. Most people will go, well, shit. If you've been around long enough to make it to OT3, you've audited a fuckload. You know, you've got a lot of shit out there stored in the archives of Scientology. So then you get further stuck in the trap of, well, now I can't leave, especially if you have some sort of really scary shit in your past that you're not a fan of. And what they do, it's like a mini pyramid scheme where they take that money that they have and then they use it towards the top for people like Tom Cruise, people like John Travolta that are the poster childs of their religion, and they make sure their lives are flawless. That's kind of what Tom Cruise had for a while. But then they got a little too serious. They tried to like primp a wife for him and all this kind of shit, and it got a little too weird. And I don't think Tom Cruise was a big fan of it. But the whole thing is just, it's all about illusions and control and this. No, well, they're not accountable for anything. So, oh, no, we'll never use this against you. And then you get out there and they use it against you. And you go, well, you said you were never going to do that. And they go, you're an idiot. You shouldn't have trusted us, idiot. Oh, good luck in the real world without Scientology. You know, it's all this kind of scam to suck you in and you know, have you walk out of your first auditing session thinking it's all very real, all very a great way to help people and all this kind of what have you. And it just doesn't, it's all bullshit. It's all just based on this allure and this illusion, and it's really a giant scam. It's genius in the fact that it's as close as you can come to a pyramid scheme without it being a pyramid scheme. Because people are just giving you money that you reappropriate. The difference is they're not expecting a financial return. The return they're expecting is mental and physical health, you know, and they get that return from things that they do through self-help techniques that the church provides them. So you have this very strange paradigm of people paying to help themselves and then getting further entrenched in this system and this bureaucracy that's just really, really absurd. And it's just all about this kind of public facade of smiles and haircuts and nice suits. And I mean, you can see the footage of when they do their big Scientology balls and this shit where they invite all these VIPs, when they crowned like in 2005 when they named Tom Cruise like the guy, whatever it was, they gave him some award for being like the face of Scientology, or being like the person that helped promote Scientology the most or something. And it's this crave fireworks and this whole big thing. They gave him a little medal and all this shit. Same thing when L. Ron died. It was just insane the amount of resources that go into constructing these huge events, and it's all just for show. I mean, they have the money to spend it, and you got billions just sitting around. It's really crazy. The entire thing is a scam, and it actually blows my mind how far it's come along. I just feel bad for the people that are entrenched in it, and I think there's a lot of people that are in it that can't quite see it. And I remember when my parents were going through it, and they never became Scientologists, but they were kind of into it. You know, they were in that, like, all right, I'm getting my feet wet. Like, this is kind of cool. I've been audited. You know, it was kind of neat. I feel good about what happened. And at first, they really liked the consultants, and they really liked that, hey, this helped turn my business around. This really helped our margins. We're making a lot of money. And then they realized after about, I forget how long it was, maybe 2 years, things started getting a little shitty. And that's when the facade starts to disappear, when you realize, all right, it's just the same shit. They say, all right, well, you're going to have to buy these books to go to the next level. They take that same model for Scientology and turn it into a consulting program. So they just basically pull all the religious shit out of it. And you start to realize, like, well, I already bought all this shit. Why am I spending more money on shit that's already helped me? And they go, oh, no, this is the next level. This is way better. This is way deeper. And then you start to realize that the more you go to, the higher the diminishing returns, the less value there is. So when you first start, it's really valuable. Your first audit is really valuable because you get all the shit off your chest. And then the more you do, the more control they have over you, and the less benefit you're getting from it. And I think they ended up buying some sort of like a lifetime package, because that's how it scales. Everything is, the more you buy, the cheaper it is, so the longer you'll stay entrenched in their programs. That's the whole basis of the model. I think my parents made the mistake of buying the lifetime one, where like, okay, you're set for life. You know, you can come to classes forever. Of course, there's always added fees, and you got to travel and do all this bullshit. And they really felt like they were taken through the ringer in terms of, after 2 years, all this shit is the same. You're just doing the same shit over and over, and this is not helpful. This is just a waste of my time and money. And I think they felt a little taken at the end of it. Even though the help at the beginning was really good, it didn't last. And a lot of their practices ended up going by the wayside 3-4 years down the road. Employees were falling into the similar habits, and it was all very temporary. And they kind of pretend that it's these permanent solutions to your problems. It's a very strange thing. The documentary is very eye-opening. I think it's a pretty balanced documentary. With something like this, you'll never get a purely unbiased approach, because people on the you're never going to get the opinions from the people on the inside, because one, they would never agree to something like an HBO documentary, which is already very negative. Kind of like how I don't agree to answer a lot of questions on Reddit because the tone of the conversation already puts me on the defensive. You just don't want to start that dialogue because it's not going to end well for you. No matter what, you're going to be defensive, and that's never where you want to be. So they're never going to do something like that. And even if they did, they're just going to bullshit. They're just going to bold-face lie. They have people in the documentary that used to be Scientologists that aren't anymore that said I was an auditor, and they just tell you to lie. They'll never admit to it, but they're very mischievous and not necessarily forthcoming when it comes to public record type stuff like that, as you would imagine. They know the power of the public record. Yeah, there you go. So definitely watch it. It's 2 hours long. It's pretty lengthy. I had to watch it in 2 chunks. I fell asleep the first time, but it is damn good. L. Ron Hubbard, goddamn, he is the crook of crooks. I think in the 20th century. He's got to be up there on my list of serious crooks, man. That guy did not pay any fucking taxes. So, okay, we got about 10 minutes left for this podcast, and then we're going to do a live Vulcan draft, and then I'm going to watch MLG all day, so that's going to be fun. It starts in about half an hour. At least the matches do. I don't know if the stream has already started. So, last thing I want to talk about. I want to talk about Vulcan a little bit. This will be a nice segue into our final bit here as we do our draft live after the podcast is done. As you know, I've been doing a lot of Vulcan betting recently. If you don't know what Vulcan is, it's that new fantasy league. They just had some big news where they're partnering up with ESL and Twitch to do some big stuff over in CSGO, where organizers are finally starting to break out of the Valve model, where instead of having the major system where Valve helps crowdfund some of that $250K prize pool, ESL is doing one themselves. And Vulcan just got a huge amount of money. They got another round of financing. I think they announced, what was it, like 12, 13 million? Something like that in VC financing. Pretty damn good. So they've got a lot of money to throw around now to take their product to the next level. I got the hiccups. This is awful. To take their product to the next level. I think it's a really good base. There's still a lot of improvements the site could make. But in general, I think they've got a really good thing going on here. And the basic premise, it's not that different from real sports fantasy betting, where you pay whatever it is to get into that pool, free, 5 cents, $1, $5. They have them all the way up to a $100 buy-in. You buy into the pool, and then there's a guaranteed prize pool, and you get $10,000 of funny money, and then if the team's competing, you have to make a custom draft of the players, and then you get points based on how the players perform. So you get 2 points per kill, -1 per death, and 1.6 points for every assist, and like 0.02 for every creep kill that they get. So it's scored just kind of based on carry performance. You don't get any bonuses for first bloods or big plays from supports or anything like that. It's just very quantifiable KDA type things. And they are sponsoring the Summit 3. That's how I got into it. I remember talking to the guy and being like, oh, this sounds like pretty cool. Sounds like something we could get behind. And we started doing it, and I kind of fell in love with it. And a lot of people are like, full sellout mode. And most of the videos I've been doing for Vulcan aren't even because I've got to go sellout mode to fulfill our contract. I just think it's interesting. I think it's fun content. I think to myself, well, I'm doing all this theory crafting when I go through these drafts anyway. Why don't I just record it and put it on YouTube, and people can watch it and get into the theory crafting as well. It's pretty cool. I like the idea of being able to theory craft KDAs and stuff. It really has been helpful for me. It's been a great tool for me to stay relevant with what's going on in Dota. One, because if you have money on a game, you really want to watch it. You are like in the zone. You're taking notes. The key players that you've drafted, you're doing it. It's this natural thing that I'm just naturally more hyped about this. I understand why people care so much about Dota 2 Lounge now, because you bet something, you bet $30 worth of items on this game, you better believe you want your team to win. So even though it's even small stakes, you put $1 on a game, I still am intrigued to watch it and see, how my players are going to do. So it's helped me take more of an active interest in games. And when you have more of an active interest in these competitive matches that you're not casting, you remember them better. So that helps with casting and other areas and panels and all this kind of stuff. It's really been a good tool for me just to stay up to date, because there's a lot of Dota to watch, and it's hard to really seriously digest all of it. And this is a step in the right direction. And I just like things that are competitive. I like being able to talk shit to my roommates and Merlini and, just let him know that, hey, man, I'm better than you. It's been a lot of fun. And remember, if you do sign up on Vulcan, the bonus codes you can use either Zyori TV or the Summit, and then you'll get a little deposit bonus and all this kind of stuff. But it's really fun. It's really been a cool little thing. And I think it's a necessary addition to the esports verse, where there is going to be a lot more infrastructure popping up in upcoming times here. Very similar to real sports, where you just have more ways to engage the audience. Just watching isn't enough, I don't think. I think part of the appeal for football is all of the fantasy pools, all of the betting, and just all of the other stuff that comes around with it. And that's where esports is lacking. Like even just like the interview infrastructure. We talked about this after DAC, where having like the actual press interviews where the players come down and the press take turns asking questions. It's a nice piece. It adds something that Dota is kind of lacking in a lot of parts of the world. So I think it's really cool. If you haven't tried out Vulcan, I highly recommend it. There are free ones that you can play without any money whatsoever. So it's definitely worth it. And with that, we're going to end this podcast. And I'm going to do my live Vulcan draft here for MLG. We've got about 30 minutes until the draft closes. So we're going to go ahead and get into that. So without any further ado, folks, thank you so much for joining us here for the Zyori Podcast. It was at a weird time and oddly announced. So I appreciate the few of you that were on the pulse, able to tune in and catch it live. If not, if you didn't catch it live, then make sure you catch the next one, whenever it will be. Who knows? I know it's hard. I wish I could just pick a day and just do the fucking podcast. Every Thursday at 6 o'clock, doing a podcast. I wish my life worked that way, but sadly it doesn't. I just can't do that. So this will be uploaded to YouTube straight away, and make sure you follow on all the social medias, the Instagram, the Twitters, what have you, all that Zyori TV. And as always, be kind to yourselves and be kind to each other. We'll see you on the next podcast. Okay, there we go. So I had a little pause there. I'm going to finish that off.